Thanks. A very good evening. I'm Sara Fatima, and I'm really very glad to be able to present my paper here in this conference. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to share a famous quote from Jim Rohn. This quote is related to what I am doing on reading, this research. So the quote says that reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary. The title of my research is Significance of EST Text Selection in an Online Learning Environment at Universities. Here, EST stands for English for Science and Technology. I'm a student, a research student with my professor, my co-supervisor, Dr. Asiah Kassim. We all together have worked on this paper. I'll just cover the 5 main components of my paper. The first would be introduction, the second literature review, methodology, discussion, and I'll conclude my presentation with some recommendations. To give a background introduction, I'd like to mention that English is significant to students' academic success, especially for university students, as most of the documentation of their field of specialization is in English. We all know that reading is a vital skill in language learning, and it's vital to obtain information, explore knowledge, and broaden their academic scopes. Students of science and technology, they require English to comprehend texts related to their discipline. S&T students are required to interact with online scientific information resources by reading scientific-related topics on the internet and reading scientific data. The statement of the problem here is that students are required to interact with online scientific information resources by reading scientific-related topics on the internet and reading scientific data. But researchers have discovered that students from science and technology degree program have difficulties reading English academic texts. They have difficulties not only in understanding the main ideas, but also in comprehending sentence structures. I have 2 research objectives in this paper. The first one is to investigate the reading problems faced by students when reading English for science and technology online materials. And my second objective is to investigate the significance of using English for science and technology materials in an academic online reading environment. My research questions corresponds to what are the problems in reading EST online materials for university students? And the second would be, how do EST material selection influence ESL learners' understanding of academic online materials? When we review the literature, we find that the nature of EST is different from other forms of written English. It's a process an author uses to write the text, as well as the ways that the information is organized. Definitely, the organization of the text is determined by the specific reader and the purpose for which the text is written. Reading comprehension of EST involves not only words or sentence, but it also needs the knowledge of particular content, sub-technical vocabulary, text organization, and reading strategies. The most common type of teaching materials, as we know, are reading texts. When we learn a language, when we teach a language, we usually use reading text. That's why text analysis is critical to determine the worth of instructional design resources. We have past studies that declare that there is a positive effect of text selection on students' reading comprehension performance levels. My research was done on 30 students. My participants were 30 students. They were enrolled in various engineering courses in a public university in Malaysia. For qualitative data, a group of 12 students were chosen. We chose 12 students, dividing them as 4 very active, 4 intermediate, and 4 not very active students. There were 6 males and 6 females. They were between the age range of 21 and 23 years. We used pseudonyms. For instruments, we used focus group interviews. They were used to identify a shared understanding of the significance of text selection for reading EST online materials. Then for semi-structured interview protocols, we also use to support the data gained from FGI. The interviews were conducted according to the preferences of the respondents, and then it was transcribed by the respondent themselves. It's a method which is member check, and it's also known as participant or respondent validation. For data analysis, we collected data twice, once in week 2 for semi-structured interview and once in week 4 for focus group interview. The data was analyzed. The focus group interview were analyzed descriptively and thematically using SPSS and NVivo. The calculation produced a K value of 0.7, yeah, indicating a strong agreement and high degree of trustworthiness. Yeah, now we'll go to the discussion. The results. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yeah. For my first RO regarding the problems in reading EST online materials, the major problem faced by students in understanding EST online material was related to linguistic aspects of English, semantic challenges. Students face semantic challenges in reading online because of word choice and language use. This gave many sub-themes like difficult words, unfamiliar terminologies, grammatical structures. For example, I'll read an interview excerpt from unfamiliar terminologies. Teeny, she responded that sometimes it contains the terms that we don't understand actually. And Ida said, generally, I think there's the difficult terms that are difficult to understand. For my second research objective, that is the significance of EST online reading materials, there were several themes which emerged on the significance, namely the discovery of other methods through comparison and contrast, freedom of expression in technical writing, and the ability to explain complicated scientific knowledge. The students were able to understand the difference. They managed to understand the difference between directional processes and informational processes. They watched 2 videos that describe these 2 processes. When students were able to compare and contrast the EST materials, they discovered that comprehension was attained through other mediums or methods such as viewing videos. In an interview excerpt, I'll read the Ruwena's excerpt. She responded that from this activity, it is actually easier to compare between how to and what to. Like one is instructional and the other one is information. So if we're describing through words, it might be harder to understand. But if we do something practical, it's easier for us to understand. The second theme which emerged from the significance is freedom of expression in technical writing. EST online reading materials allowed the students to be free, freely express their in their writing. Allowed this freedom of expression for students in the technical writing. It gave them the ability to elaborate on ideas introduced to them. Here in the table, you can see, I'll read an excerpt from Asiah. He responded in the interview that I can write it in my essay with my own words, my own creativity, and based on the passage and supporting details. The third theme which emerged was the ability to explain complicated scientific knowledge. These interview excerpts reflect students' belief in their ability to describe, elaborate, and explain complicated scientific knowledge because of their exposure to scientific activities. For example, I'll read this interview excerpt by Victoria. She said that first, what I learn in technical text is terminology. Example, the magnetic field in compass text. I also learned how to summarize videos in my own words. Now, concluding my study, I would say the findings on reading problems suggested that students lack linguistic knowledge of the language, which leads to language deficiency. They also lack background knowledge on scientific information. This can be rather challenging because of its structure and distinct features. When students, my second order, I would say that when students used EST materials online, they were able to reflect on the material and activities conducted. They were able to identify and understand the processes, and this enhanced their cognitive thinking. As a suggestion and recommendation, a greater focus on ESP should be advantageous for students because the materials are relevant to their academic fields. This can encourage critical thinking as they are exposed to English language materials that have science and technology content and exhibit the distinctive features of SNT for them to be motivated to learn. I'm really very thankful for listening to me. Thanks for this.